So thank you so much. It's a deep honor to be here, in large part because I know just how esteemed this group is, because my colleague Zina was asked to be a part of it, and she's had an awful lot to say about the conversation and about the company here. So thank you for giving her an enriching experience and giving me the opportunity to speak to you. So Chicago is actually a very appropriate backdrop for this particular talk. It was in this city in 1893 that the first Parliament of the World's Religions happened. It's given credit for kicking off the Interfaith movement in the West. And my favorite single line from that event is this: "From now on, the great religions of the world will make war no longer on each other, and instead on the giant ills that afflict humankind." So go home tonight and watch the evening news and tell me if that's come true. Are the great religions of the world making war on each other or on the giant ills that afflict humankind? Right? And think about this. What if the 2 billion Christians on the planet, the 1.5 billion Muslims, the 800 or so million Hindus, the 500 million Buddhists, the growing numbers of secular humanists decided that it was part of their identity to come together and defeat deaths related to malaria or polio or AIDS, rather than to spend an awful lot of money, energy, and airwave training their swords and arrows on each other. So I think religion is going to play a big role in the 21st century, and I think it can be one of 4 things. It can be a bubble of isolation, it can be a bomb of disruption, it can be a barrier of division, or it can be a bridge of cooperation. And I think, unfortunately, the people building barriers and bombs are winning. And I think there are 4 trends that require us to pay attention to this issue. The first trend is the religious revival. You can see it everywhere, but my favorite particular illustration of this is The Economist in its millennial issue, as I imagine many of you will remember, famously declared that God is dead. About a year ago, John Micklethwait and his colleague, The Economist, published a book whose title was God is Back. 50 years ago, the best sociologists in America and Europe were telling us that as societies modernize, they necessarily secularize. Probably the leading sociologist of that school, Peter Berger, recently said, "We made a category mistake." Right? As societies modernize, they do not necessarily secularize. What they definitely do is pluralize. But the world is probably as religious as ever, and in many places more furiously so. Very simple, religion matters in this century, and it's likely going to matter for a good long time. Second trend that makes the issue of what role religion is going to play particularly important for us, I think, and there's a youth bulge, and this youth bulge is paying an awful lot of attention to religion, not least of which because sets of religious movements are paying an awful lot of attention to them. That youth bulge is particularly prominent in very religious areas of the world. Median age in Afghanistan is 17.6. Median age in Iraq is 19.5. 85% of the West Bank is under 33. There are more children in India than citizens of the United States, which is to say, over 300 million. We live in a very, very, very young world. Trend number 4. There has never been an era in which there is more frequent and intense encounter between people from different backgrounds. Never, right? Europe, in fact, is experiencing probably the single greatest migration in terms of speed and intensity in human history, which is to say, huge migrations from North Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East to the continent. We can wake up one day and the idea of Muslims and Christians being in conflict because of their religious identities simply ceases to exist. Now, I'm not saying that that drops from the sky. I'm saying that that day is, we can imagine that day. The question is, how do you create it, right? And I think it first starts with, how do you change the framework from a clash of civilizations to a pluralism versus extremism framework? Let me give you a one-line definition of pluralism and a one-line definition of extremism. Pluralism is a society where people from different backgrounds live in equal dignity and mutual loyalty. I think it has 3 parts: respect for people's identities, relationships between different communities, and a commitment to the common good. Extremism, a society in which one group believes that its way should dominate and everyone else should suffocate. Right? That's the world we live in. There are Muslims who are there there are Christians who are there are Jews who are there, Hindus, Buddhists, secularists, whatever. As long as you, the minute that you promote wanton violence, you seize the honor of the title of your tradition and you enter into the space of the tradition or revolution of violence. Okay? How do we advance that framework? Part number 2, who's going to show what success looks like? Who's going to show what good looks like? I got to tell you something. There's no Barack Obama without Jackie Robinson. And a lot of people would say there's no Barack Obama without Michael Jordan. People needed to see in America people from different races getting along in a sector, a high-profile sector of our society, before they could imagine it in other sectors and imagine it as a social norm across society. We're far from that, but we've made progress. To partner with lead sectors so that they show what good looks like, and it's to help nurture, network, and mobilize a critical mass of interfaith leaders. Right? Why does this guy care so much about religious diversity? Well, I think an awful lot of it is because of what happens in the evening news, the wars that the United States has chosen to engage in over the past couple of years, the fact that those wars are too easily twisted by certain people to look like Clash of Civilizations wars.